Good afternoon and welcome back to our second session on nursing management of a patient with neurotic, stress-related and somatoform disorders. Basically, we thought we'll discuss this because many times some of the disorders are considered as hysterical or as just a problem, and as nursing personnel, even though the person is presenting a conversion disorder or a hysterical disorder, still requires care, and that's where you as psychiatric nurses need to remember that any person who is presenting any kind of symptom is to be taken care of, because patient is very important. You may neglect the symptom in certain conditions, but you cannot neglect a patient who is a human being. So that's the basic reason we thought we'll talk about somatoform disorder now, because we have talked about nursing management of patient with schizophrenia last time in quite a depth. So with this, we have with us two of the experts. Immediate right to me is Mrs. Raminder Kalra, who is a senior faculty at Rajkumari Amrit Kaur College of Nursing, University of Delhi. We are very pleased to have you, and I'm sure students are really going to benefit from your experience and expertise in the field. Extreme right is Mrs. Annie Kumar, who is again a senior faculty at Lady Hardinge Medical College of Nursing, and she also has been associated with many of the subjects related to mental health nursing with IGNOU, and both of them have been our counselors and writers, so I'm sure you'll benefit a lot from the discussion which we are going to have. May I request the regional centers to kindly let us know if students have any questions to ask, or if how many students are sitting, the attendance. I understand there are some students who are there at Tughlakabad. Please facilitate them to ask any question if they have. Thank you very much. With this, we start off one of the very important aspect, that what do we mean by somatoform disorders? Because somatoform disorders, are they very different than the neurotic disorders? And if they are so, why are they called as somatoform disorders? Mrs. Raminder Kalra, please.
Thank you, ma'am. When we talk about somatoform disorder, this word has got somatic word attached to it. That means the physical problems. When the person has got some physical problem due to some psychological distress, that means the patient converts his or her psychological distress into complaints pertaining to different parts of the body. That means it is the psychological stress which is leading to physical problems. Those all disorders are classified into somatoform disorders. There are different types of somatoform disorders. We have the five, they are listed four, but you have another one also which is missed out here. First is somatization disorder. Somatization disorder, when we talk about, this is when there is presence of recurrent and multiple frequently changing somatic complaints of several years duration, for which medical attention has been taken, but they are not due to any physical disorder. That means person has got multiple problems which keep changing. It is not that one physical problem is persistent. There are multiple problems. Sometimes a person has got some problem, sometimes it is another problem which is there, and there are total 35 symptoms which have been listed by ICD-10 classification. Out of that 35 symptoms, if 13 symptoms are present in the patient is classified under somatization disorder. Second one is conversion disorder, which has not been listed here. Conversion disorder, though we are going to discuss in detail, it is when the psychic conflict gets converted into physical symptoms. That means that there is some conflict in the person's mind which gets converted into physical symptoms, like maybe the person has got pseudoseizure, person has got different problems which we'll discuss in detail when we talk about conversion disorder. Another one is undifferentiated somatoform disorder. When you learn about all these five, there are certain vague physical complaints which keep varying, which are persistent, but the complete clinical picture does not fall into any of the type of somatization disorder. We classify it under undifferentiated somatoform disorder. Another one, is hypochondriacal disorder. Hypochondriacal disorder, many times you must have heard about this term, that is exaggerated concern about one's own physical health. A person having small symptoms starts saying that I have got brain tumor. With little headache, the person says I must be having brain tumor and gets all the investigation done. But even after investigation, you're not able to convince that it is not. There's no brain tumor. The person still feels it is that I have got some severe illness. The person maybe keep changing the complaints, but always feels that he has got some or the other problem, or he is likely to get into some major physical illness. That is hypochondriacal disorder, exaggerated concern about one's own physical health. Another one is persistent somatoform pain disorder. Persistent, that means it remains for a long time. Pain disorder, that means it is related to the pain. In this, there is presence of severe and prolonged pain for which there is no adequate medical explanation. You get all the investigation done. Maybe there was a patient once we had who had been complaining of pain in legs for past 7 years. He had been taking treatment for different places, but there was no relief. Ultimately, he landed up in psychiatric OPD. There, it will be a chronic pain. You get all the investigation done. There is no adequate explanation that you can give for the pain that the person is having. These are the 5 types of somatoform disorders. Talking about how do we manage the person with somatoform disorders. When we talk about nursing intervention, the one which is very important is established rapport. That you have to see that you are able to develop good interpersonal relationship with the patient. Most of the time, the person who are having this type of problem, like the nurses have the tendency that this person is having just a hysterical problem, does not need much of attention. That is wrong. Like Madam Kapoor also said, it is not the symptoms that you have to concentrate on, but it has to be the patient who needs attention. The physical symptoms might be ignored, but the patient needs a lot of attention. Then only the person will be able to come out of the symptoms that the person is having. For that, you need to sit and talk to the patient and establish good rapport. Then assess the patient's insight regarding the reason for somatic complaint. You need to talk and find out how much is the person aware of that these physical symptoms are related to the psychological stress that the person is having. Like many times when we are also under stress, you might have observed that you have got headache. You start having headache when you have a lot of stress. That's a physical symptom, but it does not remain for a long time, so it is not a disorder. But similarly, when there has been persistent psychological stress which has been persisting over a long period of time, or maybe when the person is not able to cope up with the small stress also, day-to-day stress also, when the person is not able to cope up, then the person gets into this problem. So you need to assess how much is the person aware of the cause for the symptoms that the person is having. Next is help the patient to identify stressors in life situation. Very important is let the person identify that his physical symptoms are related to psychological problems. There is some conflict that the person has got, because of which there is some problem which there is some stress which the person is not able to cope up with, which is causing the physical symptoms. So you need to help the person to identify what are the life stresses that the person is not able to cope up with. Next is refer complaints to medical staff for evaluation. That means whatever symptoms the person is reporting, they need investigation to rule out that there is no pathology behind that. There is no organic cause related to the physical problem that the person is having. Next is minimize the amount of time and attention spent on the discussion of physical complaints. Not that you keep talking about for how long do you have headache and how long it persists, for how long these symptoms are there. One needs to collect the history, but not that once history is collected, you need not every time go and ask the patient in the morning, so how long did you have the pain? And your discussion is all limited to the physical symptoms. Rather, your discussion should be more limited to what positive aspects of the treatment has been there, how the person is able to cope up, who were the people who had been visiting the person, how did he interact, how did he like talking to the people. So you should be diverting the patient's attention from physical symptoms to other things. Next is,
the other important thing is, because this is a somatoform kind of a disorder where we need to really, if we give more attention, the patient may have reinforcer.
Yeah.
That may become as a reinforcer that definitely something is seriously wrong with me, and that is why nurses and doctors are coming and talking to me about it. So that's another important thing, that we are not ignoring the patient's, patient himself or herself, but the complaints we need to attend, as you very rightly said, how much it is required, and then the other areas which can help the person to cope up that particular disorder.
Thank you, madam. Then present reality when possible. That means once a person has been able to talk about his problem, you can discuss, you can focus your attention on that. Now your investigation has been done, you have been found that there is no problem, there is no pathological reason, there is no organic cause behind it, it is related to stress. But for that, you need to prepare the patient, help the patient to come to that level of understanding. Next is encourage verbalization about feelings rather than physical complaints. It's important that the person talks about the life stresses that the person is facing, the stresses which the person is not able to cope up with. Maybe there is some problem in adjusting with the job, maybe it could be the problem adjusting with the family members, maybe certain problems which the person is not able to share with the family members. There is some conflict which is there, which is causing the problem. Next is, if no serious problem exists, limit the amount of time spent in room to avoid reinforcement of sick role. We usually do not admit the patient in hospital with somatoform disorder. Hospitalization itself makes a person feel that he is really sick, that is why he is being admitted. Usually the hospitalization is avoided. On outpatient basis the patients are being treated, but in case a person needs hospitalization, one should not make them feel that you are sick and you need to be on the bed all the time. Unless there are some real physical problems which have been persisting. The patient has to be otherwise encouraged to be out of the bed, to go to the daycare room, to go and play, to be involved in certain activities. You can send the patient for yoga session, you can send the patient for walking out, and all other things the person can be involved in. Next is explore alternative ways of coping with stress and anxiety, such as relaxation techniques. We cannot say that there is not going to be any stress. In life you are going to have stress, but what is required is that a person has to be taught about how to properly cope up with stress, how to in a healthy way cope up with stress. And relaxation exercises like deep breathing exercises, going for morning walk, yoga, meditation, these all things like Shavasana, all, they are very good things, simple to observe, simple to teach to the client. You need to encourage the patient to adopt those things so that the person is able to better cope up with life stresses. Next is focus on realistic goals for self, include significant others in conversation if able to. That means that you need to keep a realistic goal. You cannot expect the person who had been complaining of pain in legs for 7 years and the person has landed up with you for the treatment, and you will be able to help the patient with just 1 or 2 counseling sessions. It is going to take time. It is going to take time for the person to be able to come out. You cannot expect some miracle to happen overnight and the patient recovering fast. It is a long process. It really requires a lot of efforts from the nursing personnel to be able to help these patients. Next is assess the level of self-concept. How the person, the client, the patient, how is his self-concept? What are the strengths he feels he has? What are the weak points he thinks he has? And try to focus more on the strengths of the person rather than talking about, yes, this is lacking in you. The focus of talk should be more on, conversation should be more on the strengths. Next is have the patient list positive traits or attributes, which we have already discussed. Next is give positive recognition or feedback wherever he or she discusses issue rather than somatic complaint. The day you find that you've gone to the patient's bedside, patient had been every day talking about I was having headache for so many hours and other things. Next day you find the person says, you know, today I had a visitor, I really enjoyed my time. That needs to be reinforced, that it's very good that you are concentrating on other issues. So this is what is mainly about the nursing interventions in brief.
And I think this will apply to all kind of somatoform disorders, neurotic disorders, because the basic principles remain the same. That means we look after the patient, we try to attend to the patient's need, we try to neglect those attention-seeking mechanism for which the patient comes to the OPD or comes for the treatment, but still we see that no physical or pathological harm is to him or to her. For that matter, the nursing personnel can really intervene and help these patients. Now, the other important thing which is conversion disorder and dissociative disorder. So, would you like to take one by one, Annie, and explain us about both of these?
Okay. Dissociative disorder or conversion disorder, it is a partial or complete loss of the normal integration between the memories of the past, awareness of identity, and immediate sensations and control of bodily movements, in which these symptoms will be expressed in the patient, like there can be a partial amnesia, there can be bodily symptoms like there will be pseudo seizures, there can be blindness, paralysis of the limbs. Then there can be sometimes patient is not aware of the self-identity. This we'll see what are the types in detail later on. Coming to the causes, the psychodynamics. In conversion or dissociative disorder, as Madam Kalra has said, the patient's mental conflicts are converted into the physical symptoms. Like if the person is overloaded with some stress, she is thinking or he is thinking that I am not able to cope up with the situation. So just to escape from the situation, the person may get into some expression through some physical symptoms, like I said, convulsions, paralysis, blindness, etc. The disturbance is not under voluntary control of the patient, but the symptoms occur in organs under voluntary control, of course. Why the person do like that? Because they have to meet the needs immediately by gaining two gains. There are two kind of gains by which patient is benefited by showing this kind of symptoms. For example, primary gain and secondary gain. Primary gain means immediate escape from the situation. For example, it is usually occurring in adolescent girls, and for example, if she has to face a difficult situation like an examination or an interview which she is not prepared for, so she is thinking I have to do something so that I have to get an escape from the situation. Then she may have these symptoms like pseudo seizures. Then she gets escape from the situation immediately. Moreover, the secondary gain, that is benefit or support from the environment, that the person is sick. Everybody is showering attention, love, care to the person who is having the symptoms. So the person is benefited in both ways. In this disorder, patient's reaction is known by a term, labile indifference. Labile indifference means the patient is indifferent to the symptoms and display no anxiety towards the symptoms. You may think that patient is having paralysis, patient is having convulsions, but she is not much bothered or concerned about the symptoms, which is expressed by labile indifference. Why so? Because the anxiety is relieved by the conversion disorder or the symptoms displayed by the patient. The anxiety is diverted to that, so the person is not concerned about the symptoms. The conversion symptoms are compensating for the stress or the suffering. For example, they are working as non-verbal communication of the conflicts. The conflicts or the mental stress is expressed by the physical symptoms. The person feels relief of the anxiety. Patients, when they are having inner conflicts and are not able to express them, maybe due to their personal constraints or due to some cultural constraints, then they express them through conversion symptoms. Age of onset, I have already told you, it is usually seen in adolescence or early childhood, and the population which are more affected are women than men.
So what are some of the common types of dissociative disorders?
Okay, there are mainly three types of dissociative disorders, which are dissociative amnesia, dissociative fugue, and dissociative convulsions. Coming to the dissociative amnesia. Amnesia, you know, you have studied in the psychopathology. Amnesia means loss of memory. So in dissociative amnesia, what happens is the main feature is loss of memory. Usually the loss will be about some important recent events which are not due to any organic mental disorders. The amnesia can be usually of any traumatic experience which the person does not want to
May I
keep
have
in
the slide, please?
the person does not want to keep in the memory. For example, like some accidents or unwanted experiences. It can be partial or it can be selective. So you can say selective amnesia or selective forgetting, which the person does not want to remember. Second type is the dissociative fugue. Here all the features of dissociative amnesia are present, along with there can be a purposeful journey away from home or place of work. All of a sudden the person may disappear from the home environment or the work environment. He may go to some other place, obtain some other identity, and he may be functioning socially there or occupationally there. And he may forget about his own identity. That is dissociative fugue. Then the third type is dissociative convulsion. They are known as pseudo seizures. You know, the epileptic seizures occur, and these seizures are something like epileptic seizures only, which are known as pseudo seizures. They resemble epileptic seizures, but there are many differences between the pseudo seizures and epileptic seizures. For example, the level of consciousness, it is altered in pseudo seizures, but in epileptic seizures, you know, there will be complete loss of consciousness immediately after the seizures. Then regarding injury, during pseudo seizures, the person is aware that she should fall in a safe place, and moreover in a crowded place, because she has to gain the primary and the secondary gains. So she will have the symptoms displayed in such an environment where she will be able to get some attention, care, and injuries are normally not occurring in the pseudo seizures. But in epileptic seizures there will be frequent injuries will be there, tongue bite will be there. Then incontinence of urine is commonly observed in epileptic seizures, not in pseudo seizures. Then the patient will be confused. There will be post-ictal confusion in epileptic seizures, but in pseudo seizures, patient will not be confused, and as I have said, there will be labile indifference. The patient will not be concerned about the symptoms. Then investigation, if it is done, you will see that the EEG is normal in the pseudo seizures, while there will be abnormal changes in the epileptic seizures.
I'd just like to add one thing here, that when we talk about the conversion disorder and dissociative disorder, the basic difference is that in conversion disorder, the psychic symptoms are converted into, psychic conflict is converted into physical symptoms. Whereas in dissociative, as Madam Annie has also explained, it is the psychic conflict is being converted into amnesia, forgetfulness, which you have learned. Another thing that you need to keep in mind, that like we talk about that this is a hysterical patient and you try to neglect that patient. Very important is that the person is not having conscious awareness about the symptoms being produced without any organic cause behind it. It is not that intentionally the person is doing. If the person is doing something intentional, like you don't want to go for the class and you say, I've got severe headache. You know that there is no headache. That is malingering. But in conversion, the person, it is at unconscious and the preconscious level that the symptoms are produced, not at the conscious level.
This is very important because we have in the previous chapter the conversion reaction, and even in the nursing management in your practical the conversion reaction is mentioned in detail. But definitely the psychic problems, the psychic energies which are required to be used properly are and the conflicts are converted into physical symptoms, like the person who is wanting attention subconsciously, again very important, may show attention seeking mechanisms. So this is what we need to really think about of the conversion reaction. There are physical symptoms, whereas in case of dissociative disorder it is with the consciousness.
Like I just remember one example, that a patient we had in a psychiatric setup is that she was really disturbed with her husband taking alcohol and other things, and she wanted to abuse her husband. But that is not socially acceptable. Nobody will accept the wife abusing in that society from which she belonged, the cultural background that never accepted the wife being dominating and being abusive to the husband. So she developed hysterical aphonia, where her immediate gratification of need was that since she wanted to abuse, now she has got aphonia, inability to speak, so she cannot abuse. And because of that, she got lot of attention also, so the secondary gain also she was able to get.
And another very common attention-seeking mechanism is belching.
Yeah.
Now, very common, this is a very, very common mechanism that the belching, the woman or the man, whoever wants to have attention, will start belching, without having food, and it is demonstrative. Now, if, see, normally when you belch, it is not, you cannot reproduce it, you cannot demonstrate it, but if you ask the patient with a hysterical kind of reaction, show me how do you belch, and the patient can really demonstrate to you. So that itself indicates that the person is actually consciously not aware of it, pathologically does not know that there is no pathology existing. That's why I think as nursing personnel, you have to be very careful in dealing with these patients. So conversion reaction, other than what Mrs. Raminder Kalra mentioned about the nursing management in somatoform, what are some of the nursing interventions required for conversion and dissociative disorders? Please, Annie.
Okay, for management, you can make it into two phases. Like first, you have to see the removal of symptoms. Prompt elimination of the symptoms are important because it will help you to prevent the secondary gains. Otherwise, if it is reinforced, as Madam has already mentioned, there can be chances that it may become chronic. Patient should be told that there is nothing wrong. But as nurses, we should remember that, as Mrs. Kalra has pointed out, the physical symptoms are quite real for the patient. You cannot say that they are just faking. They are real for the patient, but you should not give much attention to the symptoms. You should not say that there is nothing wrong with you. We know that you are doing this and there is pathologically nothing is there in you. But you have to tell to the patient, reassure the patient that the symptoms may disappear fast. We'll do something so that you may get rid of the symptoms. Then you will be able to have different coping mechanisms when you face with the stress or the conflicts. Then detailed examinations can be done, and you can even tell to the patient that the improvement is already started. The mild sedations can be given to the patient, like anxiolytic drugs, anti-anxiety drugs can be given. Relaxation exercises can be practiced in the patient, hypnosis. Then there can be, if none of these are effective, abreaction can also be done to the patient. Abreaction means you can take the patient and give some short-acting anesthetic agent like thiopentol. Diluted doses can be given, and before the patient goes into unconsciousness, the subconscious level patient may come out with what is disturbing. This is to find out actually what is the root cause of the anxiety in which patient is expressing the symptoms. Then
yes, the nursing intervention.
Then the nursing attitude should be firm and kind attitude. Also there should be understanding, tolerant and non-judgmental. You should not think that the patient is just faking the symptoms. Nothing is wrong with the patient, and you may avoid the patient. You should avoid the symptoms but not the patient. Give attention to the patient. Then denial of the client's feeling is not therapeutic. Like you are thinking that the patient is just showing this and let us ignore the patient. Let us avoid the patient. That is non-therapeutic. Ideally, you have to sit with the patient, listen to the patient and try to find out. And all this root cause will be some kind of anxiety which is there in the patient. Like Madam has said, the patient who was against the husband's habits, alcoholism, that is the root cause for which she is expressing it through some kind of symptoms. So try to find out. Let the patient to come out. Verbal expression like ventilation. What is there which is bothering the patient? Then you can help the patient to help herself. Encourage kind to verbalize her fears and anxieties. Discuss possible alternative coping strategies so that the person next time when she is facing the stressful situation, she will not adopt this kind of solution. Rather, she will go for some kind of healthy coping mechanisms. And reinforcement is also advisable, like whenever the person is showing some coping strategies which is helpful or which is healthy, then she has to be appreciated so that she will maintain that kind of behavior in the future.
Well, there's also, like, we need to really maintain a trustworthy relationship with these people, because I find that once you gain the trust, the patient understands better.
Yeah.
That is true with all the psychiatric condition, but more of neurotic, somatoform and dissociative kind of disorders, where the patient's confidence has to be really won, and then the counseling can be done better. As you very rightly said, that the positive reinforcement is stronger. And Mrs. Kalra also pointed out that if we are there with the patient, as you said, the anxiety could be the root cause. If we are with the patient, it is better not to talk about those symptoms where they can be malingering or where they can be, reinforcement. Rather talk about other things, which are positive, and how the person is able to cope up. Well, these are some of the important aspects which we have talked about. The other common kind of disorder we have is obsessive compulsive disorder, and obsessive compulsive disorder patients are sometimes admitted in the hospital because not because they should be admitted, but the reason is that it is affecting on their physical health, it is affecting on their nutritional health, it is also becoming a sort of lot of pressure for the family to help the person or to take care of the person, and sometimes we need to really admit these patients. So would you like to talk about what is obsessive compulsive disorder, Raminder?
Yes. When we talk about obsessive compulsive disorder, there are two terms in it, obsession and compulsion. Obsession is the repeated thought which a person gets. That means persistent repetition of a thought which a person knows it is irrational but is not able to have control on it. Like suppose the person feels that my hands are dirty. The person is not able to overcome that thought in spite of doing whatever washing procedure that the person is doing. The thought which is there in the person's mind, that is obsession. Compulsion is the irresistible urge to perform an act repetitiously. There is an urge that yes, I must wash my hands. Usually if you are washing hands, maybe you wash once, twice, but these people might be washing hands 50 times, 100 times, or maybe for 1 hour, 2 hours, they may be spending lot of time for washing hands or any other compulsive act which they are doing. So when it is obsessions and compulsions both present, or if it is only obsession present or only compulsion present, we call it as obsessive compulsive disorder. So there can be only obsession, there can be only compulsion, and it can be a combination of both the obsessions and compulsions, which we call it as obsessive compulsive disorder. If we see to what is the psychodynamics and etiology of obsessive compulsive disorder, usually they have got weak, underdeveloped ego. There are various reasons for it, and in psychodynamics particularly it is related that if according to the Freud, that if their parents had been too strict during the toilet training period, if the mother had been, it is early starting of the toilet training, or the mother, usually if it is a toddler, maybe the child is able to control sometimes they may not be, the child is not able to have that to control in early stages. But if the mother is too strict, the parents being too strict, every time talking about cleanliness and all those things, they are having a strong superego development that yes, you have to follow what is being told, a lot of strong morals, values which they get inculcated into the individual, and the person is not able to cope up in future whenever the person is having any stress. That stress in a person can make the person go into obsessive compulsive disorder. There is strong superego and there is weak ego development in the person suffering from obsessive compulsive disorder, and usually it is that the persons start with this problem during adulthood, early adulthood or adolescent period. And when we talk about the psychodynamics, usually these patients, these individuals with obsessive compulsive disorder, they have 4 defense mechanisms which are involved, which are isolation, undoing, displacement and reaction formation. Isolation is that the person is washing hands, person is under distress, but they isolate the effective component of the activity from the physical activities which they are doing. That means they are not so much emotionally involved in the activity that they are doing. It is more of to control the anxiety. Any obsessive thought creates lot of anxiety in the individual, and obsessive compulsive activity helps the person to overcome that anxiety. They make the person feel relaxed, but since the person is having that disease process, so again the obsessive thoughts they come, again the person does a compulsive activity and the anxiety is relieved for some time. They usually have lot of rituals which they develop. Maybe certain people, they are ritualistic. We also have, when we talk about obsessive compulsive disorder, usually students have the tendency that I also have some counting. I also am very particular about keeping my room clean. I am also very particular that this book has to be kept like this. It should not be moving here and there. If somebody comes and keeps my book on other place, immediately I go and do it. Little bit of obsessions and compulsions may be present in an individual, but if they start interfering with the person's routine, if you are not able to carry out with your routine activities because of this, then definitely it is a disorder and needs the medical attention. Certain obsessions, certain compulsions, like when you're getting up, you're getting ready to go for the duty or for any work, we usually have such certain rituals which we follow. That is, after getting up, you have to do this activity first, and then another activity, maybe you get a phone call in between, you get disturbed, and you feel that, no, I'm going to go forget something. Maybe I'm forgetting to carry my mobile or something, and then later on you realize that, yes, it is because my activities were disturbed in the morning. So, little bit of obsessive compulsive activities may be seen in an individual, but they usually do not disturb the routine of a person. The signs and symptoms which can be there are like repeated thoughts. They may be more of, sometimes it may be related to sexual imaging. Once we had a patient in the ward, around 35-40-year-old female, and she used to say that whenever I see any male person, I feel that as if I'm having sexual intercourse with the person. Now this could be that it can be very distressing to the individual, but she was not able to control that thought. That was very distressing to the individual. Or it could be related to that I have to do certain thing, I have to do certain thing. There can be different thoughts that my hands are dirty. But most of the time it is combined with the compulsions. It can be like buttoning, unbuttoning, checking. Certain people like setting up of the almirah. You take out the things, you arrange, and these people who are suffering from OCD, maybe the whole day they are spending to just arrange their almirahs throughout the day. A lot of time is being spent on the activities, whatever they are doing. Maybe it could be washing clothes. If they are washing clothes, they may be washing clothes throughout the day. So these are some of the signs and symptoms which are commonly seen in these patients.
And I had seen one of the lady, in the neighborhood, the daughter-in-law will complain that she goes, whether it is a winter or summer, she goes and has bath with all the clothes washed. So there is no place to hang the clothes. How do we guide, And then these are the people who actually require the medical intervention or medication because this is not within their control, because as you said, that the thought keeps coming repeatedly, and unless they perform the act, the anxiety doesn't get relieved. But what are some of the management areas which we need to keep in mind? How do we manage these kind of patients, because these are quite common amongst the people, and as a person grows, sometimes the elderly show these kind of symptoms very frequently. So what are some of the management strategy and the nursing intervention we can keep in mind?
Around 20-25 years, if you talk about, there were not good drugs available to treat obsessive compulsive disorder, and it was mainly the behavior therapy which was being given. But now we have got very good drugs available to treat OCD, and many times psychiatrists, they concentrate just only on giving the drugs. The drugs which can be given is under antidepressant. You must have studied, or you want to study about clomipramine. That's a drug of choice. But since it has got more of side effects, these days it is the SSRIs like Fludec or fluoxetine hydrochloride and sertraline, which is being preferred. Under behavior therapy, you have got cognitive behavior therapy, there is modeling, flooding, response prevention, thought blocking. These are some of the techniques. Thought blocking, to tell you just in brief, that you tell a person that whenever you get a thought, speak yourself a little loudly, stop. And this a person has to practice. It may be very difficult initially, but found to be very effective. To talk quickly about nursing interventions, when you talk, it is very important that you establish trust.
Yes.
And because these people, they have got lot of guilt feeling. They know that what they are doing is wrong, but because of the disease process, they are not able to control. So you don't have to tell this is wrong, your hands are not dirty, they are clean. You don't have to argue, because that is going to make the person feel all the more depressed, all the more having guilt feeling, rather than coming out of the problem that the person has. Observe for the signs of increasing anxiety, and whatever we have talked earlier about managing anxiety, relaxation and all, they have to be followed. Remove the patient from the stress which stimulates. Now, do not expose that, yes, you have to do some dirty work, or maybe any activity which is required, which makes the person's hand dirty and the person is upset. Those things have to be avoided.
I think the major approach has been covered up in the beginning, but very important is developing a trustworthy relationship, psychological support, ignoring the symptoms, not the patient. Especially hand washing, you can tell them to use creams, soft, soap and all
The
that.
activity should not be restricted in the beginning.
Right, that's very important. So keeping that in view, I think you've got an overall view or overall idea about how to manage a patient with somatoform disorder or neurotic disorders, and role of a nursing person is very important in developing a relationship, helping the patient to have positive reinforcement so that the symptoms can be eliminated. Thank you very much, Annie Kumar and Mrs. Raminder Kalra, for being with us, and I'm sure students have gained it. We'll come back at 2:30 and have a discussion on pediatric nursing, but please give us attendance, because I know in some of the centers students are sitting, but we have not got any call. Maybe you are understanding everything, but if you have any question, you're welcome to ask us. Thank you very much.